Great, wow, that was a very rich panel, a lot of information. So I want to have ample time for folks to ask questions. And so we'll just open up the floor. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions for any of the panelists or just generally. Questions at all? Oh, yes.
A question for Ms. Garcia. You just talked about helping to move communities further along in the whole process. What are the plans? Does the plans include the youth, younger folks to get involved in this understanding the environmental impact?
So you just mean in educating? Yeah, because we do have a youth component, and we're trying to actually ramp it up, I guess is the word, but we have a national environmental justice working group, and we've been adding on a full day of a youth workshop and trying to get high school students from whatever city we're in. So we were in Kansas and Brooklyn, and we're going to be in Albuquerque in October. And we're finding that those are very successful, that a lot of times, unfortunately, young people don't make that connection between their asthma and some of the polluting facilities. And so it's been great to bring in some young people. So we're hoping to do a little bit more. Nancy Sutley, the administrator, while we were doing this White House Forum on environmental justice, did I'm probably gonna get it wrong, a webcast, you know, and so also bringing it to the young technology, which I don't really understand, but you know, through Twitter and Facebook, and they did a webcast. And once again, it's really trying to get young, mainly focusing on high school and college students involved more in their community, what's in their community, and how they can help out. And actually, HHS has been really good in helping us out because they issued a report saying, we recognize there are health disparities, and I think it was an action to reduce health disparity in racial and ethnic populations. Mm-hmm. And so really focusing on health disparities in minority populations. Like, there's no question anymore. We're talking about severe health disparities. And so I think it's important for children to hear that also.
Yes. One of the things that I'm finding is that by the time we try to educate the community as to the disparities and what's happening and that type of thing, the folk who have been perpetuating the problem, it's gone on for so long, and they are continuing to do what they're doing, and you're here trying to say, hey, wait a minute, this is happening, and the rules and the regulations and all of the timelines have passed. So the question is, how do you catch up so as to be able to be on top of? Because by the time you educate the public, and that's a task within itself, trying to pull that together, the powers to be, if you will, have moved right along with whatever they're doing in regards to their, continuing to pollute and continuing to do what they're doing.
So one of the that's a very interesting thing. We oftentimes come up with that question whenever we get calls from community members. We were just speaking to a community in DeKalb County, Georgia, who have a biomass incinerator proposal that has been permitted by the county commissioner. And these three amazing, courageous women, they're all volunteers. Two of them are grandmothers. They've banded together and now are organizing their community. They've recalled their county commissioners for being industry pawns, are contacting the media, are launching a civil rights campaign. Again, it's amazing what community groups can do. We found of those 19 proposals that were defeated, at least half of them were already permitted. So they were moving ahead. And despite the regular rules and regulations, the fact that government isn't always on side, or local decision makers may be in the pocket of industry, community groups have successfully organized and turned, just in Springfield, Massachusetts, another environmental justice community that has a waste incinerator, they just completely switched the vote around in their local office because they organized all the local businesses, all the local community organizations, the youth groups, the campuses. They all turned up, and the city hall couldn't say no to when their people came banging on their door.
Is that documented someplace so that other communities can be encouraged and they can use that as a springboard?
I think like what Mike was saying, we through our websites, we try to share these stories, and that's really, we don't have full-time web staff, but what I do simply do is take news clippings and ask people to write up their pieces and post it to our site whenever I can.
Can I just add something to that? You know, I agree with Ananda that definitely the best way to get out ahead of it is to stop new projects from being built if they're going to add to the burden of local communities. But I think that some of the work that's being done primarily by EPA, but also some state agencies on existing facilities, things that have been there for a long time, that are established, as you say, is quite important. And here's why. It's just that if you're operating an incinerator or a coal plant or an oil refinery, the way in which your facility is competitive is because you don't have to pay for the pollution. All of the costs of the mercury, and the arsenic, and the lead, and the soot, the sulfur, the nitrogen oxides, all of that is being paid for by ratepayers or the people who live around the community. Before I was talking about the cost in human lives. 13,000 people die because of soot coming from coal plants every year. The economic cost of that, according to the Clean Air Task Force, is $100 billion annually. That's more than we pay in tobacco-related healthcare costs, right? So just from the soot. So when EPA finalizes a rule, as it will do in November, on mercury and arsenic, what that will do is it will force coal plants, just for this particular instance, to clean up their facilities, or to partially clean up some of their facilities. And so when that happens, what that means is that increasingly wind becomes more competitive, and energy efficiency becomes more competitive, and solar becomes more competitive. When you take all of the rules that EPA is currently working on, soot and smog, the ozone rule that will be finalized this year, the cross-state air pollution rule, all of these things collectively, what will be happening is that the impact will be quite significant. And we're already seeing, in terms of energy production, the cost of wind has come down by 90% over the last 10 years. The cost of PV solar panels has come down by 50% in 2 years. So what we have is that clean energy is getting cheaper, dirty energy is getting more expensive. And so the way to get at these old facilities is to hold them to modern standards.
Other questions?
And one thing, when we got started, it was so basic. We went to the computer and typed in how to fight a biomass incinerator, and all these local community groups popped up because everybody now creates a website when they're fighting one of these things. And we cobbled together all the best ideas. We plagiarized what they did, and we went out and tried everything. And the recall election was next on our list. We're also lucky because we have 5 politicians up for election this November, and they have finally turned their public presentation on this matter more toward an environmental perspective because they realize they're vulnerable, and the vast majority of our community is now against this thing.
Do you want to go? Yeah.
My name's Ed Alvar. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, right next to the Gen Air plant. And last year I filed a suit in state courts to bring the city council decision-making process to stop a particular matter from coming into the environment. I was in court 45 minutes and I got tossed out because I didn't have any standing, said the judge. So I've appealed that to the Supreme Court, and the case is now pending under a theory that the Civil Rights Act of 1866 applies, and that there's a disproportionate impact on the black community, which I live in. 1/3 of our people in Alexander are African American and or Latino, and the other, there's about 16% that describe themselves as mixed, so who knows. So that's who I am, but I wanted to present something to you today that I never heard of before. There's a small agency that presented to us lawyers here at this convention. It's the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Program. A chap named William Smitherman from the Pacific office said, all you have to do for us to clamp down on polluters is to file a complaint with our office. And we've conciliated 44 cases in the last fiscal year against polluters who contract with the federal government. Now that includes Dominion Power in my backyard. It must include your Pacific Power Company. What is it, Edison? They're one of the sponsors here. I don't think I'm going to get the time of day from the United States Supreme Court. It would be a stroke of lightning. But maybe this agency is the place to go, and we don't need the president to sign a letter directing federal contractors to comply. So I offer that to the panel and everybody here by way of saying there are legal remedies that maybe just have not been addressed. I compliment the Sierra Club on their $50 million grant from Air Bloomberg, and really hope that the first plant you take out is the Gen On plant. Alexander.
Okay, so there are 2 questions, well, 3 now, so 1, 2, and 3, if that's